In this week's Parsha, we read about one of the most terrible sins that the Jewish people ever did, the sin of the spies. The spies, they go to the land of Israel, they come back, they give a terrible report, and because of that, Hashem decrees that both the spies and the people who believed their reports are not going to go into the land of Israel. But there's a very interesting Parsha, there's a very interesting discussion right after that story. After the whole aftermath, after the story, the people cry, they realize they're never going to go into the land of Israel. What the Torah talks about right after is incredibly surprising, and I think teaches us an incredibly powerful lesson. Right after that story, right after the people just found out they're not going into the land of Israel, the very next pasuk says, "Vayedaber Hashem a Moshe lemar." Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, "Speak to the Jewish people and tell them when they come into the land of their inheritance." And then the Torah goes on to talk about the laws of the karbanos, the sacrifices, and the libations. And the obvious question is, the Jewish people just found out they're not going into the land of Israel. And now you're going to go tell them that these are the laws of people who go into the land of Israel? Isn't that like pouring salt on the wound? They just found out they're not going, and now you're going to teach them the laws of the land of Israel? And just to strengthen the question a little bit more, the Medrash in the introduction to that Parsha actually says that the reason why Hashem told Moshe to give this Parsha, to give these halachos right then, is because Hashem said to Moshe, the people are sad. Go and be menachem them. Go and comfort them with Torah. How is this a comfort to them? By teaching them the laws of the land of Israel? By teaching them laws which they will never observe? That's going to be a comfort to them? That's just going to make their pain so much more. Says Rav Moshe Shmuel Shapiro, we learn an incredibly powerful lesson from here. We learn that the greatest thing in the world is learning Torah, is studying Torah. And the greatest person that the Jewish people could have learned Torah from is Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, no matter how much pain they were in, and no matter what they were studying from Moshe, even though the topic of Torah that they were studying from Moshe was a topic that they themselves would never keep, was about the thing which is so very painful to them, going into the land of Israel, because they were never going to do that. It didn't matter. The fact that they were able to learn Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu, from Moshe himself, that was the greatest comfort. Hashem says to Moshe, go and comfort them by teaching them Torah. Because no matter what you're going to teach them, even if you're teaching them about the laws of going into the land of Israel, which they themselves will never keep, still, they're learning Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu. What greater activity could they do than that? What an incredibly powerful lesson. Of course, we all have things going on in our lives. We're all busy. We all have our challenges. We all have our ups. We have our downs. But let's remember, we have the most powerful thing that we can possibly do. We have the opportunity to study Torah whenever we want. So whenever things are going rough, whenever things aren't going as we want, whenever a person is feeling down or a person is feeling like they're going through a challenging time, open a sefer, open a book, listen to a shir, study Torah. It's the greatest thing that you can do. Have a great Shabbos.